If you're looking to get inspired by a stunning Japandi color palette for your upcoming color scheme, well, you're in for a treat because this is the Sassy 6. 6 paint colors that are not sexy, not sassy, they are sassy. I wanted to do something a little bit different today, but still live within the realm of paint colors, because we're the paint people after all. Normally, I like to provide you all with maybe a wall color option, a trim color option, and a fun accent color. But for today, I want to just give you 6 colors in a palette that you can use any way you really want to. It doesn't matter if you're taking your walls into consideration, or your floors, your furniture, your pillows, your curtains, or your ceilings. I'm just giving you 6 colors to get your brain going, and for my first Sassy 6, working title, I was inspired by a recent YouTube short by my good friend Nick Lewis over on the Nick Lewis channel. If you haven't seen his stuff yet, what in God's name are you doing? He recently put this video out and it really reminded me how much I love Japandi design, as it really influences a lot of what I do in my own home. So I have 6 colors from Benjamin Moore's Color Stories palette that start light and get darker as it goes on. The last color is a bit of a wild card, but it's one that I absolutely love and I feel really adds something special to the whole palette. Starting with Plaster of Paris, probably my current favorite neutral paint color in the beige category. And what I love about it is the complexity of it all, which may sound a bit comical considering it looks beige, but it's more than that. The fact that it's part of the CSP color line means it has many different colorants used within it to put it all together. In southern exposed rooms, it can really warm up, but in northern ones or cooler lit environments, it almost starts to have a slight white chocolate coloration. Really, really lovely. So you could interpret this as your baseline light neutral color, but I'm sure there's tons of furniture pieces that you've seen that share characteristics to this color. Even though Japandi design tends to have a lot of warmth, I find it's always nice to bring forth a bit of color temperature contrast. And that's why I picked Perspective as the second color in this palette. It's a little bit of a light mid-tone gray, a bit silvery, a bit cool, but also somewhat earthy. Yet another neutral color that is much cooler, but still just as nuanced as the previous one. It has just enough of a difference to Plaster of Paris to really add a nice sense of dimension with a color that isn't much darker either. The main difference is in their temperatures. I do tend to favor warmer tones overall, especially when I'm working within the Japandi style. So Perspective as a color, although lighter in general, I use it to a lesser degree to just add those little pops of smokiness here and there. You could use it as a wall color and go more heavy-handed with it, but I prefer it in smaller doses to accentuate certain things. Moving on to much warmer colors in the mid-tone category, this one is called Natural Leather. And guess what? It does a wonderful job at describing what the color feels like. With undertones of brown and red, this leather feels worn and comfortable. But don't think you need to let this manifest on your leather breakfast stools alone. This is a color that you can really immerse yourself in as a primary color in your Japandi palette. One of the big distinct difference between Japandi and Scandi is not everything needs to be white or off-white. Inject some color into your space. Of course, the simple way to use it is just in the form of accessories and chairs and furniture, but don't be afraid of going a bit bolder with your whole palette. Scandi color palettes like to stick with more minimal off-whites, but Japandi, you can really go a bit further. Speaking of going a bit further, the next color amps up the red richness in a color called Coral Bells. Now, it's definitely a more earthy terracotta take on coral, but it does have a combination of red, orange, and brown, giving you a much more saturated take on the warmer neutral color palette. I chose this color because I do feel it's a little easier to implement for a lot of people, but you could also amp up the red undertone, reduce the orange, and end up with sort of a dusty mid-tone pink color for something even more fresh and modern. And if you need an example of what I'm talking about, then maybe look at something like Kept Love Letters or Raspberry Glacé. So as we keep adding to this color palette and building it up, I do feel the need for something a little more grayscale to bring things back to reality a bit. And that is with a color called Arctic Seal. While not quite black or even off black for that matter, Arctic Seal tends to read more as a slate gray that feels extremely neutral. So not overly cool or warm. It doesn't have a strong green tinge. It seems a little more like a slightly cool, deep taupe color. In person, it may feel a bit cooler than how it reads on a color swatch, for example, but that's what I like about it, to be honest. For a much darker, deeper alternative, you could also go with something like Espresso Bean, which is even more taupe feeling with a mega deep brown quality. But my last color is one that I just can't stop talking about and using in my space. It's still my favorite accent color and really completes the whole look for me. It's, of course, Chimichurri by Benjamin Moore. The darkest color in this palette, and when you put it next to all the others, it just makes me feel super sassy. So what do you think about these larger color palettes that I'm presenting? Let me know down below, and maybe I'll do it again. Just a reminder, check out Nick Lewis on YouTube and Instagram. He makes great content, and he's also a really great dude. And so are you, or dudette, or whatever, if you've made it this far. Catch you on the next one.